This video is going to be tough. First of all, because of the subject matter, this is something that you don't want to talk about. It's not fun to talk about this. Second of all, because the people who I'm going to cover in this video do not have a large knowledge of their history. But I'm going to do my best in this video. And basically this video is going to be about the Graham family and how they have become one of the modern day tragedies of pro wrestling. I mean, when you think of the tragedies of pro wrestling, it tends to be in the families, the Benoit family tragedy, the Von Erich family tragedy, and now the Graham family tragedy. And for those of you who don't know, Mike Graham recently killed himself. He was a former professional wrestler. He worked in Florida Championship Wrestling, where his father, Eddie Graham, was the booker. He was never one of the tallest guys. I think he was around 5'8", and he was always one of those guys who was a very good worker, apparently, in his prime, but never got the big push because he never had that look of that superstar, that 6'3" Jack superstar who could do everything. He never had that look, and because of that, he never got the big push. And at the age of 61, he sadly taken his own life and shot himself. Apparently, shot himself in the head. Now, I wasn't going to mention that fact, but it's totally relevant. No, you'll understand why now. Because in the last 2 years, his son, Mike Graham's son, killed himself. A self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, apparently, as well. And in 1985, Eddie Graham, who was Mike Graham's father, 55 years of age, shot himself in the head and killed himself. I mean, what does it take to make people sit up and say, wait a minute, 3 generations in one family have all killed themselves, and it's a direct line. Its grandfather, its father and its son have all killed themselves in the exact same way. And I mean, that's absolutely awful. I mean, for anyone who's ever had to deal with any kind of suicide in their personal life, whether it be a family member, a friend, a neighbour, a colleague, it messes with your head a little bit, because especially the first time you come across it, you cannot relate to it. The first time I came across it, I was in high school, and well, that's the first one I knew to be a suicide anyway. And it was a guy who lived 3 doors up from my house, and I was about 12, 13 years old, so for 13 years of my life I probably saw this guy once every few days, you know, said hello to him a few times, probably, you know, he probably played with me in the streets a few times when I was a child, kicked a ball to me or something, you know, what adults do with children when they see them in the streets. Say hello, yeah, whatever, run into him, you know. And one day I was coming home from school and there's a window in his door smashed, and I thought, that's a bit strange. And then an hour later I'm out with my friends and we're playing out on the street, and there's an ambulance outside and they're carting out a body, and he'd hung himself. And to me, as a 13-year-old boy, I mean, my mum was sort of like trying to usher me and the other little kids, we were 13, other kids were saying, oh, don't look, lads, go over, give him a football somewhere else, go on, fuck off, basically. You don't want to see this, because you don't want to see this body bag coming out of here, this guy you've known all your life. I mean, I didn't know him that well, I'm not trying to say that, but the fact that, to me, he looked like an ordinary guy, he looked like everybody else. I could have confused him with any other neighbour on my street, but something was wrong with him to the point where he thought there was no other way out, that he had to hang himself. And sort of the point I'm trying to get across here is that you never know. People will just look like there's no problem in the world, but inside they're tormented and tortured. And this is somewhere where I think the WWE needs to sort of step in, and you can't really police it that much, but I do believe that they should probably send out regular messages, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, once every 6 months, to the former workers saying, listen, if you are dealing with any issues, please come to us, we will help you get help, we will pay for you to get help, because I think it's so needed. The amount of professional wrestlers who commit suicide, Chris Benoit is a massive example of this, as somebody who really needed help, in my opinion. But this is exactly along those lines. Again, let's go back to the Von Erichs. Kerry Von Erich killed himself. His youngest brother killed himself. I can't remember his name, sadly, at this moment in time. Maybe it was, and I don't think it was David, but I think David died in Japan. But we're having these heroes of our sport killing themselves, and it's something that, as a fan, I feel really uncomfortable with. And sort of like my last video where I was discussing cancer and how the awareness of it and the getting checked out early and catching it early so we can beat the disease. That's the exact same sort of message that I'm trying to give across here. We as fans need to sort of demand more from the WWE. Do more to help your ex-workers. Mike Graham, someone who, to me, I've had very, very little exposure to him. But he worked for WWE every now and then. He worked, the way I was exposed to him was he inducted his dad into the Hall of Fame, and he was featured on a few of the Legends of Wrestling roundtable things that they did on WWE 24/7. You know, where they sit around the round, like the semicircle roundtable, and they discuss different stuff like factions, etc., etc. That was my exposure to him. And one thing I've noticed is that nobody's really talking about this. Obviously, the usual suspects have all posted news articles like WWE.com, Wrestling Observer, Bleacher Report, PW Torch, all posting stuff like, we give our condolences to the family, rest in peace, Mike Graham. And that's nice, but I'm a part of the YWC, the YouTube wrestling community. And I know a lot of people like to say, oh, there's no such thing, blah, 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 but we are. We all sort of know each other, who each other are. We all watch other videos of people in the same community. And we all like to think that we're quite thoughtful wrestling fans and we're quite knowledgeable, but why is nobody talking about this issue? Why have I only seen 4 different videos on this in the hundreds of wrestling talkers on YouTube? Why has it only been 4 videos? One of them is a podcast, so they're not even proper wrestling talkers. Well, I suppose they are. One of them is just a video montage of pictures with a little song. One is a young kid who just seems to be promoting his backyard wrestling company. I mean, he's used this topic to draw people in and say, oh, come and watch my videos for backyard wrestling. That's not what he should be doing at all. And one is where a guy just stated the facts and gave no human emotion, which, fair enough, that's his style of video, but this is what I want. I want people talking about this. I want the human emotion talked about, and how this is one of the wrestling tragedies, one of the biggest wrestling tragedies ever, in my opinion. You'll struggle to find many more that are as bad as this. Obviously, I've already spoke about the Benoit stuff and the Von Erich stuff, but you'll be hard pressed to talk about anything that's more tragic than this. And it seems like because they didn't have long WWE careers or they weren't featured in the WWE, that they're not relevant. They're not relevant to talk about. Like, was it Brian Armstrong, Road Dogg's brother, who was killed recently? Actually, I think Brian Armstrong is the Road Dogg. Sorry, I've totally botched that one, haven't I? But basically, the Road Dogg's brother killed himself recently. I think it might have been Brad Armstrong. Yeah, I think it was Brad Armstrong. And I mean, the fact that these 2 guys have recently died and they're not getting much press coverage from the YWC just because they didn't have long wrestling careers. Then you have some guy who's just worked a few years in the wrestling industry, died, and you'll see loads of videos. And that's fine, but this is a real issue that I believe needs to be discussed and needs to be addressed within the WWE. I mean, am I out of order here? I mean, am I expecting too much? Let me know what you guys think on this subject. I mean, that's a text message. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, because I'm really interested to know about this topic. I want you guys to read up on Mike Graham, read up on Eddie Graham, learn about Eddie Graham. I'm going to do that myself because I know very, very little on Eddie Graham and Mike Graham. So I'm going to spend probably the best part of the next... Well, I'm going to training soon, but on my way to training, I'll be researching on my phone and I'll be reading up on this sort of stuff. Because I'm really interested to find out what happened here and what is going on with this family and what the WWE are doing to prevent this sort of thing from happening ever again. Because I would be very surprised if something like this doesn't happen again. Very surprised. I mean, how many more wrestling family tragedies do we have to go through before we finally sit up and say, listen, we're going to we're going to do something about it now. I mean, we've gone through the Von Erich stuff, we've gone through the Benoit stuff, and now the Graham family have had to go through this tragic loss of 3 members, 3 generations of the same family. I mean, I can't get over that fact. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.